When I was a kid, I used to visit my dad's side of the family every few months. Those trips always ended up the same way. The adults catching up over pints at the local bar, the smell of cigarettes in the air, and me, the kid, sitting nearby pretending not to listen while my uncles swapped the same stories for the 100th time. I didn't mind it, though. Every time we went, a few relatives would toss me a couple of euros for sweets or crisps, and for a kid, that was the best part of the night. But there was always one man there who stood out. He never sat with my family, never joined their conversations. But I'd see him, usually sitting alone at the end of the bar or standing near the jukebox, quietly nursing a drink. What caught my eye first were his tattoos. They were identical to my dad's. Same symbols, same placement, down to the faded swallow on his right arm and the old jagged dagger across his wrist. It was uncanny. Sometimes he'd call me over and hand me a Coke or give me a few coins, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I always assumed he was one of my distant relatives, maybe a cousin I hadn't met yet, or an old friend of my dad's, but no one ever said his name. Years later, when I was making my confirmation, I remember seeing him again. Everyone was dressed up, suits, dresses, the usual. But there he was, standing outside near the car park, wearing a vest top like it was summer. The tattoos were still there, clear as day. He didn't come over this time. He just stood there, smiling faintly, watching me. I ran back inside and told my dad's sister that I'd seen him again, but she just frowned and said, "Who are you talking about?" I tried explaining. The man with the tattoos, like Dad's. But no one knew who I meant. They brushed it off like I was imagining things, but I wasn't. I knew what I saw. Then in 2009, my dad passed away. It was sudden, and it hit me harder than I expected. I was 16 and angry at the world. The night of the wake, I stepped outside the funeral home to get some air. Or to drink, if I'm honest. I was sitting on the curb, tipsy, trying to stop myself from crying when someone sat down beside me. It was him, the same man, same tattoos, same quiet smile. He didn't introduce himself, just looked at me for a moment before saying, "I've been watching over you all this time." His voice was calm, soft, almost comforting. He told me to stay in school, to keep going, that it's what my dad would have wanted. He said he'd see me at the funeral, but he never did. I looked for him the entire day. I even asked my cousins if they'd seen a man with tattoos like Dad's, but no one had. Not one person remembered him being there. Years passed. Life went on. I stopped thinking about him, or at least tried to. Then, 3 years later, my girlfriend and I were in Liverpool for a weekend getaway. We were sitting in this old pub, near the docks, when a man came over and sat down at our table. It was him again. He hadn't aged a day, still the same faded tattoos, the same expression. My girlfriend froze. She said he looked so much like my dad. She'd only seen him in photos, but she was certain. He stayed for just a minute or two, talking casually, asking how I'd been, if life was treating me better, if I was taking care of myself. Then he smiled and said, "Just checking in," before getting up and walking away. We sat there speechless. When I turned to look at where he'd gone, he was already gone. No trace of him outside the pub, no car driving off, nothing. For years I didn't see him again until last week. I was out for an evening run, cutting through the quiet part of town near the old industrial park. It was getting dark, the streetlights flickering on one by one. That's when I saw him again, standing under a bus shelter that hadn't been in service for years. He looked exactly the same. No wrinkles, no graying hair, nothing. Just standing there, waiting. I slowed down, unsure if I should even approach him, but he stepped forward before I could move past. He said my name, softly. Then he smiled, the same calm, almost kind smile he'd always had, and said, "It's nearly time for you to return the favor." I asked him what he meant, my voice trembling. He just tilted his head. "It's your turn to watch over someone," he said. "I'll be back soon to collect you." And then he turned and walked away. I was too stunned to move. I stood there until he vanished into the darkness. I haven't gone for a run since. I barely leave the house now. I don't know what he meant. If it was some kind of message, or a warning, or something worse, but I can't stop thinking about what he said. It's nearly time for you to return the favor. Every time I close my eyes, I see those same tattoos, the same smile, and I can't shake the feeling that one night soon I'll hear a knock at the door, and it'll be him. I used to work the night shift at a crematory and funeral home. Most people already look uncomfortable when I tell them that, but honestly, I didn't mind it. The quiet was something I'd grown used to. It's a strange kind of peace, sterile air, the low hum of the refrigerators, the fluorescent lights that never seem to dim or flicker. You'd think a place like that would feel heavy or haunted, but for the longest time, it was just still, until that night. It was sometime around 2:30 a.m. The only sound was the low buzz from the old computer in the office and the slow ticking of the wall clock. I was halfway through filling out some paperwork when I heard it. The unmistakable beep-beep of the front door sensor. That sound only went off when someone opened one of the two doors in the building, the front entrance or the basement door that led to the back lot where the body deliveries came in. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe one of the other employees had forgotten something and came back. But when I looked at the security monitor, the front lobby camera showed nothing. No one coming in, no one standing outside. Still, protocol said to check. So I got up, flashlight in hand, and walked through the main hall toward the front. The building felt different when I left the office, like the air had gone colder, heavier. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor, bouncing off the walls in a way that made it sound like someone else was walking behind me, just slightly out of sync. When I got to the front entrance, the door was still locked. I tugged on it just to be sure. It didn't budge. Then I went to the basement. Now, the basement of that funeral home wasn't like in the movies. No flickering lights, no exposed brick walls. It was clean, functional, well lit. But when you know what's kept down there, it's hard not to feel a chill crawl up your spine every time you walk in. I went down the steps slowly, the beam of my flashlight cutting across the metal cabinets and stainless steel counters. Nothing seemed out of place. The back door, also locked. But here's what made my skin crawl. The sound. It wasn't just quiet down there. It was too quiet. You don't realize how much background noise a building usually makes until it stops completely. No hum from the vents. No faint mechanical sounds from the coolers. Just dead silence. I stood there for a good 30 seconds, listening, waiting for something. Anything. But nothing happened. Eventually, I told myself it must have been a glitch in the sensor and went back upstairs. Except I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. A few nights later, something similar happened. I was in the basement again, organizing paperwork at my desk near the back window. That window looked out toward the small parking lot where we received the body deliveries. There was a single light attached to the corner of the portico. It stayed on all night, flooding the space with pale yellow light. I'd sat in that same spot for months. I'd seen that light 1,000 times. But that night, I saw something move through it. At first, I thought it was one of the other employees doing a late drop-off, but when I checked the schedule, there weren't supposed to be any arrivals until the next morning. Then, I saw the shadow. It stretched across the far wall of my office, tall and human-shaped, moving slowly like someone pacing back and forth just outside the window. But when I turned to look out, there was nothing there. The light outside didn't flicker. The air was still, yet somehow the shadow kept moving. I remember my heart beating so loud it drowned out everything else. My instinct told me to grab the phone, to call the police. But I froze. Part of me wanted to rationalize it. Maybe a tree branch swaying in the breeze. Maybe a stray cat. But it wasn't windy, and the movement was deliberate. Human. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the shadow stopped. I don't know what compelled me, but I walked to the door and looked out. The parking lot was empty. Every single space. No cars, no movement. Just that one buzzing light illuminating a patch of concrete. I didn't call the police that night either. I probably should have, but I convinced myself that exhaustion was making me see things. You work enough nights surrounded by death, and your mind starts playing tricks on you. Still, that uneasy feeling never really left after that. Every creak, every faint sound of movement, it all felt amplified, like something was lingering in that building, just out of sight. Then came the last incident, the one that finally made me consider quitting. It wasn't me this time. It was one of my co-workers who worked the early morning shift. He came in one day, pale as a sheet, and told us what he'd found. When he pulled up to the funeral home around 6 a.m., he saw a car parked directly against the back door, driver's side facing the building, door wide open. At first, he thought it was a body delivery gone wrong. Maybe someone had dropped off a case early and forgot to close the door. But when he looked closer, there was nobody inside. Something about the way the car was positioned freaked him out. It wasn't parked like someone had casually pulled in. It was rammed right up against the door, like the driver had lost control or wanted to block the entrance. He didn't even approach it. He just called the police. When they arrived, they found out the car had been stolen hours earlier. The driver had apparently been fleeing from police, and for reasons no one could explain, he ditched the car there, right at the back of the funeral home, and vanished into the woods behind the property. The cops searched the area but didn't find anyone. After that, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe those earlier things I'd seen, the shadow, the beeping door, weren't glitches or tricks of the mind. Maybe it wasn't the building that was haunted. Maybe it was drawing things in. The desperate, the lost, the dead, and the living who were just close enough to one or the other. Every time I pass that place now, I still get that same chill in my chest. The same one I felt standing in that silent basement with the broken air vents and that impossible shadow on the wall. Because when you work around death long enough, you realize something. Not everything that walks in the dark is gone. Some things just stay. I was 10 when my grandma passed away, July 2016. She'd been sick for a while, and even though everyone said it was coming, it still didn't feel real. She was the one person who always made our house feel warm, even in silence. When she was gone, everything about that house started to feel heavier. The air, the light, the quiet, it all had weight. I was in 5th grade then, and I had my first phone, just one of those cheap ones for safety. My mom worked a lot, and she'd always tell me, "Call me the second you get home." It became a habit. Every day, same thing. I'd walk home, call her, hear her voice, and that meant I was safe. My grandparents' house was old, the kind of place that creaked when you walked, where every sound had its own echo. My 2 aunts and my cousin lived there, too. My cousin, Amaya, had just graduated high school, and her little sister, Holly, was one of my best friends. We were always together. That August, just a month after the funeral, school had started again. The first week was chaos. The district had suddenly changed the bus rule. Only 2nd graders and younger could ride. Nobody knew about it until that morning. I remember standing at the stop, sweating in the sun, being told I couldn't get on. My mom called the school and complained, and they made an exception for a few of us for that day. After school, I got off the bus with Holly and Amaya. My friend Jay's mom picked her up right away, so it was just the 3 of us standing on the sidewalk, the heat shimmering off the asphalt. We talked for a bit, then I waved goodbye and started walking home. My grandpa usually unlocked the front door for me before I got there, but when I grabbed the handle that day, it didn't move. Locked. That had never happened before. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Nothing. I called my grandpa 4 times. No answer. Now my grandpa was a light sleeper. He could wake up if you breathed too loud. There was no way he didn't hear the phone, so I walked around the side gate. He always kept it unlocked. But even that was latched shut. The backyard key wasn't in its usual hiding spot either. I remember standing there, staring at the empty yard, the curtain in the kitchen window barely moving. It felt off. Not scary exactly, but wrong. Like something was out of order in a way I couldn't explain. I started to notice little things I hadn't before. The birds weren't chirping. The air was still. Even the wind seemed to have disappeared. Every shadow felt longer, stretching across the driveway and the grass. My heartbeat started to race, and I could feel my palms sweating. Then I remembered the window, the one in front, with the broken latch. You could slide it open from the outside if you pushed the frame just right. I managed to get it open easily, but I wasn't small enough to climb through. I could see into the hallway, dark still. I thought about calling for help, but everyone was either at work or school. And even if someone had answered the phone, what could they have done? My anxiety built with every second that passed. So I ran to Holly and Amaya's house. I told them what was happening and asked if they had a bobby pin or something. I'd seen people pick locks in movies and thought maybe I could do it. Of course, it didn't work. So I asked Amaya if she could try climbing through the window and open the front door from inside. She hesitated but eventually agreed. We helped her up and she slipped through the window. The house swallowed her. We waited. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. I started to call out, "Amaya!" The front door clicked open. She stood there, pale and trembling a little. Her eyes weren't on me. They were on the hallway behind me. "What's wrong?" I asked. Her voice came out low, uncertain. "There's someone in there." I froze. "Who?" She hesitated before answering. "An older lady." Something in my stomach dropped. What did she look like? She swallowed. She had short, curly hair, glasses, and she was just standing there in the hallway. My throat went dry. "Did you see her face?" Amaya shook her head. "No." She turned before I could, but she was right there, just watching me. I didn't say anything, just thanked her and stepped inside. The air was colder than outside, like the house had been sealed shut for days. I looked down the hallway. The shadows seemed thicker there. That was the hallway to my grandma's old room. I expected to feel scared, to bolt back outside, but instead I felt this calm, like something had settled. As I walked past the doorway, I noticed tiny things I had never paid attention to. The faint smell of her perfume lingering in the air, the soft tick of the old clock in the living room, even the gentle creak of the floorboards, as if they were breathing with me. The house felt alive in a different way. I stopped at the hallway, just staring. And then something incredible happened. The air around me shimmered slightly, and I could swear I heard her whisper my name. Not loud, not a voice from nowhere, just a whisper that brushed against my ears. "I'm here." I froze, heart hammering, unsure if I should run or stay. The whisper didn't feel threatening. In fact, it felt protective, comforting, like she was saying, "I've got you." I slowly walked down the hall, passing the doorway to her old room. Everything was as it should be. The furniture, the pictures, the smell of lavender, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. The feeling stayed for a few minutes, that strange, peaceful quiet. Then it was gone. Later, when my mom finally called back, she said everyone had been dealing with a sudden phone outage. Nobody's calls had gone through. Every number I dialed that day had been unreachable. The timing still doesn't sit right with me. It's been years now, but I still visit that house sometimes. My grandpa keeps it just like it was when she was alive. Every time I pass that hallway, I stop for a second. Not because I'm scared anymore, but because I feel that same quiet peace again. And sometimes, when I stay too long, I catch a faint whiff of lavender. That's when I know she's still around.